Hi there. I suppose this video really is just to weigh in on the debate between the PDC and the BDO darts organisations. I suppose, like any darts fan, it's still quite contentious as to who's right, who's wrong, and who's better and who's worse. But there's more to the debate than just the performances of the players and the state of these both forms as professional organisations. But I mean, obviously, one is arguably more professional than the other, so I just thought I'd just weigh in on my thoughts on that because I find it quite interesting. Bit of background, I'm a huge sports fan, but specifically sort of tennis, darts and snooker really is my bread and butter. And darts, I love it, I've always loved it as a player. I've never played in any leagues, but I mean, you know, truthfully, when I'm playing at home, I reckon on a good day I average about, I don't know, 75 or something like that. My highest ever average when I've been sort of playing with myself, I know that doesn't really count, but my highest average ever is about 83 or something in that region. So I know a little bit about darts. I can play a little bit, but anyway, I suppose it starts really with the actual quality of the darts. There's no question that the PDC is better in terms of quality. That, you know, the numbers don't lie. The averages are just astronomically higher in the PDC consistently, not just in the final stages of tournaments and things. Throughout, it is consistently in mid-90s, and in the latter stages of the big tournaments like the Grand Slam and the World Championships and the Premier League, whatever, you know, they're into the hundreds consistently, 100 and 104, you know, between the top sort of 6 guys in the world, maybe more. Whereas in the BDO, you just don't see that at the lakeside in the tournaments. You know, you're lucky to be getting 95 in the final. I can't even remember a time when it's been sort of close to 100 really. I think that is important because in any sport, you know, the quality is what sets it apart. So when you talk about you know, the greats of the game, you kind of have to look at how they perform, not just how many titles they won. So when you know so when you get the likes of you know, Phil Taylor, his titles are against the best players in the world. You know, he's consistently beaten people for well, you know, 20 years now, and his performance speaks for itself. Whereas if you would sort of look on the other side of the darting world and look at someone like, I don't know, Martin Adams, for instance, you know, he's sort of shied away from the PDC, and he's kind of, you know, dressed it up as a loyalty thing, and you know, he doesn't need the PDC. The PDC is brash and all those things. But what it really comes down to is he's actually not as good as a professional, because as a professional you want to beat the best out there to call yourself the best. If you don't, then you know, you're denying yourself the chance to be, you know, discussed in the same sentence as other people, which is what he's done really. I think that you know, from experience, I suppose, I've been to the PDC, I've been to Ali Pali and watched the darts, and I've got to say, it was piss poor in terms of the atmosphere. When you get there, it's just like a drunken mess, you know. You watch it on the TV and it's all kind of loud and you know, and you kind of get into it and it's brilliant. But I tell you what, you're better off staying at home, I think, because I'll give you an example. Just keep it brief. Give you an example. We you know, I went with a friend of mine and we saw. Admittedly, it was round 1 and it was you know, it was Simon Whitlock and Dennis Priestley with sort of the biggest draws that day. Great players, obviously. Ronnie Baxter as well. But there was a prelim match and. He played Simon Whitlock, and the biggest cheer of the night throughout everything was when this pissed up idiot stood at the bottom of the gantry and downed a pitcher of beer, and everyone just went crazy. And you think, well, you know, and they're all there like, stand up if you love the darts, all that sort of stuff. And you think, well, are you there to watch the darts or just go out on the piss? And you know, and when you're there, it's just. It's not brilliant. I don't think it's very good. And the second thing I'll say about the PDC through sort of you know, experience as well, when you watch it on TV, when Taylor beat Van Gogh a couple of years ago in the final, the last time Taylor won the world title, in fact, he was kind of saying in his post, you know, match interview, he was sort of hinting that he might be, you know, quitting the sport. He doesn't know how much longer he'll, you know, be continuing. And this is big news. You've got, you know, in the world of sport, you know, if we're talking relatively here, there's nobody bigger. He's won in his own sport. He's excelled. 16 times world champion, the biggest name in darts, the best performer in darts, and he's hinting that he might be giving it all up. And who gives a shit? Nobody. Everyone's still there, like cheering away, downing their drinks, and you've got the top performer in their sport saying they potentially might be leaving, and just nobody cared. They didn't give any respect to him when he was talking. It's just a joke. And the same thing this year when when Van Gerwen won it against Peter Wright, and he's talking about how proud he is to do it for Holland and all those things. And again, it's a big story. He's a young guy. He's mid-20s. He's going to be dominating for a long time, and nobody gave him the courtesy to actually to talk. Nobody listened to him, and I think that's sad, really. I've not yet been to the Lakeside, but when you watch it on the TV, you get the impression, okay, the quality's not so great, and there's not as many big names. Whenever somebody in the past couple of years has won it, they've gone to the PDC, like Christian Kist, and Bunting has gone, and Dean Winstanley got to the final against Wolfie, and he went across. So they've not really got the big names. But one thing they do have, I suppose, which shouldn't be overlooked, is actual enjoyment of the sport of darts. So, they sit down and they really love darts. It doesn't matter whether they're averaging 70 and missing doubles and whatnot. They're there to enjoy the occasion and to sort of cheer on their man. I don't think you see that as much in the PDC. So I suppose the final thing to mention about the two organisations would be the PDC is a true professional organisation. You can earn money there, and I'm not saying that everyone can earn a crust there, but you've got to, if you're willing to commit and you're half decent, you can earn some money, and that's brilliant, because that was the entire point of why they split in the early 90s, rightly so. So if you're good enough and you commit, PDC, fantastic. BDO, not so much. Prize money's less, tournaments are less, TV coverage is less, sponsorship just by exposure is going to be less for the players. They're going to earn less money that way. Scotty Waits, cracking player. For the sake of darts, he should go across to the PDC, but he won't, because he's just I suppose a humble guy that doesn't really want to do that, which is fine. But I mean, the point is that says it all, really. You've got a world-class player, undeniably world-class player, beating all the PDC guys when he won the Grand Slam, and consistently performs, and he won't leave, and that sort of sums it up, really. It's sort of loyalty, but I suppose it can't be overlooked how much they do for the amateur game, and if it wasn't for the BDO, even still now, like whenever you go down the pub or whatever and you see these guys playing darts on an evening, a lot of that's, the bulk of that is BDO. So they, on the grassroots level, they do an amazing job of getting people involved in darts, and that shouldn't be overlooked. And the PDC actually doesn't really do that in the same way. They've got Q School and things like that. I beg your pardon. They've got the qualifying stuff where you can have a crack at it, but the BDO really is something else when it gets people involved. So I'm not saying that this is comparable, sort of financially, it's not, but the BDO does give people that sort of springboard, that platform in there, and I think that's really where it's gone now. I don't think that the BDO should be concerned with trying to compete with the PDC anymore. I don't even think it actually is, to be honest. I think they've kind of accepted they're this once a year BBC institution, and that's great. Stick to their guns and good luck to them. But the PDC can learn a lot from the BDO still. I think that it's not quite right. Darts isn't there. I can't question the way they've gone, because obviously it went from being a nothing sport, and it's absolutely huge in Britain and in fact across Europe, and who knows, one day probably wider, and that is down to the PDC, no question. So they have done an amazing job, but one thing they need to do, I think, is actually work on what people are going to the live events for, because it's very different to why people are tuning in on the TV. Those are my thoughts, really. I've just done that off the top of my head, so it's not particularly well structured, but yeah, I hope you've thought a little bit about that, and just have a chat back.